Today's is a third session out of the four session series for Sant Gyaneshwar. We have concluded two sessions so far, discussing the stories about Sant Gyaneshwar and his family. The first one was on February 7th, and second one on March 7th, exactly 11 weeks ago. Since then, we have been privileged to learn in depth traditional teachings of Keno Upanishad from Professor Rambachan and practical and educational sessions on Yaksha Prashna by Professor Prasanna Kumar. In our last session, we noted that as predicted by Gorakshanath, Gyaneshwar had a mission to fulfill in this world and become a guide to many. After their miracle in Alankapur, where he buffalo recited mantras from Veda, after Gyaneshwar patted him on the forehead, smiling affectionately, asking it to recite, the family moved to a village named Nevashe on the banks of the river Pravara, which is presently in Ahmedabad district in Maharashtra. At the request of the inhabitants in that village, they decided to settle there for quite a while. Here in the Shiva temple, enlightened Gyaneshwar gave his discourse on Bhagavad Gita in the form of poetry, not in Sanskrit, as was the custom on those times, but instead in Marathi, his native language, so that an average person could fully grasp the profound knowledge and wisdom in those teachings, which came down directly from Bhagwan Sri Krishna. His spiritual heritage of Nath Sampradaya, as described in Gyaneshwari by him, is Lord Shiva, Shakti, Matsyendranath, Gorakshanath, Ghaininath, and finally his elder brother, Nivruttinath. Here, in addition to their writings of Shankaracharya and Ramanujacharya as well. A young boy of 14 years, Gyaneshwar, explained Lord Krishna's immortal song of Bhagavad Gita, of course in Marathi, dressing it with amazing imagery that touched the hearts of simple folks. It's indeed an unforgettable sight. The crowds of young and old, men, women, and children, sitting spellbound in that little Shiva temple and mesmerized with the sweet words of this young teenager, leaning against a stone pillar, which we all can see even today, and the flickering lights of burning oil lamps, his eyes flashing and sometimes clouding with the tears of compassion, he touched his audience deeply as he unraveled the mysteries and truths shared by the divine universal teacher, Jagadguru Sri Krishna. No one seemed inclined to leave his presence on any day. Scholars, as well as average folks, found their doubts cleared. He named his book of 9,434 OVs as Bhavartha Deepika, meaning one that shines the light on the inner meaning. He completed it in year 1290, when he was merely 14 years, as I mentioned earlier. You'll ask me what an OV is. OV has the couplets, with each generally divided into 4 charan or parts. The first 3 are rhymed and have the same number of matras composed of 6 or 8 letters, but the fourth one is open, short, and unrhymed. Give you an example. Durita se timira jao, Vishwa swadharma surye paho, Zoje vanchira tote lao, pranidata. This book became available 300 years later, unfortunately, but of course, thanks to Santa Ekanath, when he recovered the original manuscript of Bhavartha Deepika, edited it, but kept all the words absolutely unchanged before making it available for larger audience. He also went on to build a samadhi of Gyaneshwar in front of the Murti of Vitthal Rakhmai, which still exists to this day for the devotees to visit and seek blessings in Alandi. Sant Eknath describes that Gyaneshwar came to him in his dream to tell him to deliver him from the root of an ajana tree that was coming around his neck, and then to recover the manuscript for the devotees. In his own poetic way, Eknath says about that dream, Shri Jnana Deve Yeuna Swapnata Sangitli Mata Mazalagi Divya Teja Punja Madanacha Putra Parabrahma Kevala Bolatase Ajana Vrikshachi Muli Kantasa Lagali Yuni Alandi Vegi ऐसे स्वप्न होता आलो अलंकापुरी तवा नंदी माझारी देखले द्वार एका जनार्दनी पूर्व पुण्य फळ श्री गुरु भेटले ज्ञानेश्वर. Having had the privilege to read Gyaneshwari many times, thanks to my wife Kumud, whose family was absolutely devoted to this book, and after studying commentaries on Gyaneshwari by several scholars, I know for certain that to discuss all 9,434 OVs individually during our Sunday sessions is utterly impractical. What I plan to do instead is to summarize his commentary only on one single verse, the last verse of Gita, 1878, which corresponds to 26 OVs in his 18th chapter of Bhavartha Deepika, 1633 through 1659, to illustrate his command of the subject matter and try to bring out his brilliant poetic style. After that, I shall conclude for today by summarizing his love and reverence for his Guru. In the next and the final session on Sant Gyaneshwar, I plan to discuss few final OVs from the original text when he asks for the grace from God, known in Marathi as Pasaida, only 8 verses, 1793 to 1801. So here it goes for the part 1 for this morning. That shlok goes like this. Yatra Yogeshwaro Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shri Vijayo Bhutir, Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. Wherever is Krishna, the Lord of Yogas, and where there is Partha, the wielder of the bow, there are fortune, victory, prosperity, and unfailing prudence. Such is my firm conviction. Just to translate in plain, simple English. Commenting on this verse, Gyaneshwar through 26 OVs tells that Sanjaya said, victory is with him who's befriended by God. God's nature being victory itself, victory in any case must accrue to the side where God is present. Dhritarashtra, the father of Kauravas, anxious to know the result of the fight was taking place between Kauravas and Pandavas, asked Sanjaya on what side victory would ultimately lie. And Sanjaya had no hesitation whatsoever in telling him that victory must lie with the side where Lord Sri Krishna was. But Gyaneshwar didn't stop there. He continued his poetic elucidation of that last verse for quite a while. He said, where there is moon, there is a moonlight. Where there is Lord Shankara, there is his spouse Parvati, her love grace, and all her powers. Where there are saints, there is wisdom and goodness. Where the king is, there is the army. Where there is goodness, there is friendship. Where there is fire, there is the burning power. Where there is compassion, there is religion. Where there is religion, there is happiness. Where there is happiness, there is God. In springtime, there are groves. In the groves, there are always the flowers. In the flowers, invariably, you find the clusters of bees. Where the guru is, there is knowledge. In the knowledge, there's a vision of the self. In that vision, there is enlightenment, Atma Anubhav, Atma Sakshatkar, and thus total fulfillment and utter contentment, Samadhan, which is a major step towards beatification or towards sainthood. Where there is fortune, there is enjoyment. Where there is happiness, there is energy. There is sun, there is light. There is Krishna, there is Lakshmi, Shri, and all of the other powers of Bhagwan, such as Jnana, Vairagya, Virya, Yasha, Aishwarya. To translate in English, knowledge, dispassion, creative power, victory, absolute fulfillment with all forms of riches, including spiritual, and finally, overlordship. Krishna is victory himself, Gyaneshwar said, and with the party with which he had sided, the victory must ultimately lie. In a place where Krishna and his devotees are, the very trees will beat down the wish trees, Kalpataru, in heaven. The stones are simply jewels. The earth is made up of gold. To the rivers of that place flows nectar. The baby words or the prattling of him whose parents are Krishna and Kamala is equal to Veda. His very body is divine. And as the cloud, which is born of the ocean, is more useful to the world than his parent, similarly, Arjuna is now more useful to the world than even Krishna. The touchstone makes the gold of iron, but the world prizes the gold than the touchstone. Spiritual teachership is not called here in question. Fire shows itself in the shape of the lamb. That a son should conquer his father is the peculiar wish of the father. Where Arjuna is, there is victory as well, because he is the favorite of God. Sanjay concluded by saying, if you believe in the words of Vyasa, then believe in what I say. Where the Lord of Lakshmi is, there is a company of saints, there is happiness and infinite auspiciousness. If this turns out false, then I shall cease to call myself the disciple of Vyasa. With these thundering words, Sanjaya raised his arm, and that is the conclusion he makes. By these 26 OVs, which I tried to translate in English, just from one verse of Gita, 1878. I hope you appreciate how powerful, forceful, and as yet poetic this description is. And now everyone can understand why he needed to write 9,434 OVs to bring out the truth and the beauty from 700 verses in Bhagavad Gita. I mean, I'm really totally enthralled to just make this translation to transcribe only one verse from Gita, and you can understand how impossible it is, impractical it is. In our Sunday sessions of only half an hour to 45 minutes to cover up all these OVs. Now, in the second half of our morning's discussion, I would like to describe the respect that he had for his guru. Gyaneshwar was so much devoted to his guru that he from time to time continued to express that intense and deep devotion while commenting on the verses from Bhagavad Gita. In the very first chapter, Gyaneshwar said, his guru has enabled him to cross the ocean of existence by administering proper collyrium for his eyes. Guru has allowed him to see every hidden treasure, and by placing the wish jewel in his hand, granted him fulfillment of all his desires. He continued, as when the tree is watered at the bottom, it goes out to the branches and foliage. Or, as when man has taken a bath in the sea, he may be said to have bathed in all holy waters of the world. As when nectar has once been enjoyed, all the flavors are forthwith enjoyed. Similarly, when the Guru has been worshipped, all desires become fulfilled. This is the first chapter, just 5 OVs, 22 to 27. Gyaneshwar tells once again in the 6th chapter that what is difficult of comprehension, even by brilliant intellect, one may be able to visualize by the light of the grace of Nivrittinatha, his Guru. That which the eyes cannot see, the disciple will be able to see without the eye if he gets super consciousness that Guru can bestow on him. That which alchemists vainly seek after may be found even in iron, provided the paris or parisa comes to the hand, handed out by the Guru. Similarly, when there is the grace of the Guru, what cannot be obtained? He concluded this section of 3 OVs. He is rich with the infinite grace of his Guru. Chapter 6, verses 32 to 35. While commenting on the indescribable greatness of the Guru, he asks, is it possible to add luster to the sun? Is it possible to crown Kalpataru with flowers? Is it possible to add a scent to camphor? How can the sandal tree be made more fragrant? How can nectar be redressed for meals? How can one add a hue to the pearl? Or what is the propriety of giving silver polish to gold? It is better that one should remain silent and silently bow down to the feet of his master. The 10th chapter, 6 OVs, 9 through 15. In chapters 12, 13, 14th, and 15th, Gyaneshwar starts each one with invocation to the grace of his Guru. 12th chapter, he speaks of the gracious eye of his teacher, making poisonless the fangs of the serpent of all sense organs. How is it possible, he asks, when the grace of the Guru comes down in floods, that the scorching heat of samsara may continue to burn one in grief? The grace of the Guru, like a true mother, rears up the spiritual aspirant on the lap of Adhara Shakti and swings him to and fro in the cradle of the heart. Like a true mother again, the grace of the Guru waves lights of spiritual illumination before the aspirant, puts on him the ornaments of spiritual gold. The grace of the Guru rears him up on the milk of the 17th kala, making him devoid of attachment, and plays the sounds of toy anahatanada, Om, 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 putting him to sleep in ecstasy. As a true lover of the Marathi language, Gyaneshwar finally called upon the grace of his teacher to fill the domain of the Marathi language with the crop of spiritual knowledge. This is the 12th chapter, 19 OVs, 1 through 19. In the 13th chapter, Gyaneshwar speaks of his guru as being the cause of the knowledge of all sciences and as so filling to make his own literary expression so mellifluent to eclipse even that of the nectar. 13th chapter, OVs 1 through 5. In the beginning of the 14th chapter, Gyaneshwar spoke of the vision of the Guru, eclipsing the appearance of the universe, just as when the sun shines on the horizon, the moon fades away in the background. He states that when the Guru shines in the horizon, all the sciences fade away. It is thus that the only adequate way of expressing one's appreciation of the greatness of the Guru is to submit in silence to the feet of the Guru, for the greatness of the Guru can never be adequately praised. 14th chapter, OVs 1 through 16. Similarly, in the beginning of the 15th chapter, Gyaneshwar speaks allegorically about worshipping his Guru. He said, "Let me make my heart the seat for the Guru, and let me place upon it my Guru's feet. Let my senses sing the chorus of unity and throw upon the feet of the Guru a handful of flowers of praise. Let me apply to the feet of Guru a fingerful sandal ointment made pure by consideration of identity. Let me put on his feet ornaments of spiritual gold. Let me place upon them 8-petaled flower of pure joy. Let me burn the sense of egoism, wave the lights of self-annihilation, and cling to the feet of the Guru with the feeling of total absorption." 15th chapter, the opening 7 OVs. Gyaneshwar was so full of respect for his teacher that he felt that any word of praise that may issue out of him would fall short of the description of the true greatness of Nivrittinatha. When little lights are waved before the God, who is the ocean of the light, we have only to take into account the spirit in which the lights were waved. Remember, we sing the same verse every day in the morning when we do puja. A child plays in all manner of ways with the mother, but mother takes into account or the spirit in which the child is playing. If a small brook carries water to the river, does a big river throw it out simply because it comes from a very tiny brook? It is thus that I approach thee with the words of praise, says Gyaneshwar to his Guru. And if they're inadequate, it behooves thee only to forgive this puerile simplicity. 16th chapter, 17 through 30. Let me conclude today by talking briefly about the humility of this brilliant young scholar, a poet, an enlightened 14-year-old Sant Gyaneshwar. Gyaneshwar was too conscious of the fact that the work that he had written was destined to be one of the greatest works in the world, and as yet he never takes to himself the pride and credit of the composition. He regarded himself as a Chataka bird, if you remember, in whose upturned open bill the cloud of Nivrittinatha's grace sends down drops of rain. When Guru has accepted the disciple, the whole samsara becomes full of joy. In this very wise truth was my ignorance turned to knowledge by the grace of Nivrittinatha. 15th chapter, 18 through 28 always. Just as he was mindful of the grace of the Guru in the composition of his work, he was likewise is he only too cognizant of the fact that other saints, besides his own teacher, also had a share in the production. He says, if you teach a parrot, he says to the saints, will it not give out proper words at the right time? This plant of spiritual wisdom has been sown by you, O saints. It now behooves you to read it up by considerate attention. Then this plant will flower and produce fruits of various kinds, and by your kindness, it'll be a source of solace to the world. And finally, he tells how he is merely taking the path which was first stated by great Vyasa, how he has been merely putting the language of Marathi, the great words of Vyasa. If God is pleased with the flowers of Vyasa, asked Gyaneshwar, would he refuse these little durvas that I may offer to him? Nirvidata, his divine powers, inhabits my heart. It is thus that every new breath of mine is turning into poem. Or what is not the grace of the Guru competent to do? 18th chapter, verses 1708 to 1735. Gyaneshwar considered himself to be merely an instrument in the hands of the Guru, to whose real authorship the whole world is due. In reality, Gyaneshwar was recognizing his Guru, the tradition of all the teachers that came directly from Lord Shiva. We always say, Sadashiva Samarambhat, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Asmat Acharya Parantam, Vad Guru Paramparam. However, the fact remains that every individual always needs a living individual in the form of one's enlightened teacher, who himself had gone through the traditional teachings to get enlightened. Nirsinatha was the one in case of Sant Gyaneshwar. Just Swami Dayananda was there for Professor Rambachan. Whenever Anand concludes his sessions, we all have noticed it several times. I certainly have, and Kumud has, that after he concludes an important and powerful teaching session, that his eyes get moist in the memory of his Guru Swami Dayananda. I'll stop right here. Thank you. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. I'll open up for questions and comments, and I'll start with Anand if it's okay with you.
Thank you very much, Shashi, for sharing this extraordinary humility of Sant Gyaneshwar ji, and in speaking so beautifully of his indebtedness to his teacher, and for attributing all of his accomplishments to his teacher. And of course, as you mentioned, I'm always grateful, full of gratitude in my heart for my own teacher, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, who taught me without, I must say, taught me without asking anything of me. And never told me, I want you to go and form an organization. I want you to publicize me, or spread my own name in any personal way. Give me great freedom, throughout my relationship with him. And I think that you have said it so beautifully in your discourse this morning. In our tradition, we have always believed that this kind of wisdom, which is a special wisdom, a special teaching, is best received. Not that one can't read about, especially now that we are in the age of printing and internet. Not that one cannot read about some of these things in books or websites, but our tradition has always held that spiritual wisdom is best received from someone not only who knows what he or she is speaking about, but one who has also made this a part of his or her life, integrated this wisdom into who he or she is. This is the best person to learn from. So that, you remember, Shashi, the beautiful verse from the Mundaka Upanishad, where the Upanishad itself tells the student where he should seek or she should seek knowledge. You know,
Mhm.
Vijnanartham sa gurumeva bhigachit
Mhm.
srotriyam brahmanishtam.
Exactly.
Srotriyam brahmanishtam. One who knows the Sruti, but one whose life exemplifies that
Brahman.
teaching. And I think there's something very beautiful in that ideal, because a guru is not only imparting words and knowledge to a student, but also wants a student to learn a particular way of being in the world. So the guru becomes the model for what the student should become. The guru holds that possibility. And I think we learn best when we see spiritual wisdom embodied in someone. So I thank you, for focusing on Gyaneshwar's relationship with his guru, and those verses in which he has spoken so incomparably about his teacher. We are grateful for all our teachers. Shashi, thank you.
Well, Anant, I think that's the main reason that in the olden times you had to stay with the guru at his place
Yes.
and watch his activities not only in the classroom but also in his day-to-day life. And I think
Yes.
that really gave the disciple a true understanding how the life should be, and especially for those people like us who are sansaris, we don't get that understanding unless you live with the guru itself, and which you certainly had a personal experience by spending 3 years with Swami Dayananda. So thank you.
And there's no doubt, Shashi, just one final point. There is no doubt, and you are well aware of it, we have seen it, that this relationship can also be exploited by unscrupulous.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no doubt about it. But I think we have to look at the ideal. And as you mentioned something really important, that our tradition also spoke about service to the Guru Seva. And it
Mhm.
was not just, because, the guru wanted someone to take care of him. But I think such service enabled one, as you said, to be in close contact with the guru, which gave you an opportunity to observe and learn from his way of being, not only from what he or she said, but who he or she was. So seva was also an opportunity for deeper learning. But we can't give up our critical faculties because of the possibility also of exploitation
Right.
these times.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I think it's so very important for our community members who are interested in this spirituality to meet often enough in an environment where they can interact, have interchange of ideas, and allow a personal growth of every individual. Say, like we do satsangat when it's sangatvam. So I think that interaction is important. I think Zoom meetings are fine. At the same time, nonetheless, at least on occasion, meeting at the temple on a regular basis will go a long way as we see it.
Yeah, here is the book by uh, Gyaneshwar,
Yeah.
Gyaneshwari,
Yep. Correct. Exactly. Right.
Bhavartha Deepika.
Yeah.
And here is this, it's a very excellent English translation. Here is the person who translated this.
Who's that?
Uh,
Nandekar?
It's not?
yeah, Keshav Bhagavan.
Okay.
Okay. I got about 6-7 copies of huge Gyaneshwari at home.
Yeah.
Thanks to Kumud.
Yeah, here is the Gyaneshwari's pillar.
Remember, he's leaning against. I saw
in the
his story
temple.
last time.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
in the temple at you heard. Yeah, it's
Nevashe, right.
yeah, everything is well said. One thing we need to remember is we tend to forget the guru as time goes away because we get the false impression, I know it all. Sometimes when you cannot resolve the dilemma that you are in, at that time you think very deeply, what would my guru say about this? And miraculously, the answer comes to you in a flash. That's because you have appealed to the guru's senses. I am lost. I don't know how to get out of this jam. Will you come and help me? And it's always there. Guru is always there. So for any, as I always said, to be successful in life, you need to put in your own effort, swadhyaya. You need to put in the Guru's effort, blessing should be there, and the divine grace should also be there. So in addition to our own effort, we cannot forget the grace of the Guru and the grace of God. If one of these elements is absent, there is no success. So to say that everything is done by me, and Guru is incidental, I think that is wrong thinking. So I think we need to look at Guru not only as a revered person who teaches us, but also as a friend. I don't want the student to be afraid of the Guru. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I want the student not to be too cavalier in his attitude towards the Guru. There has to be a very healthy relationship. And that relationship comes by devotion. The Guru recognizes it and the student appreciates it. And
True.
this translation of Gyaneshwari Bhavartha Deepika is very good. Excellent. Excellent translation. Yeah.
I think, thank you for sharing it.
I'll be speaking in June on dharma and adharma and the contrast between Yudhishthira's thinking of dharma and Duryodhana's thinking of dharma, which raises very important questions that are difficult to answer. What is dharma? What is dharma? It's not as simple as it sounds. So I'll be spending the next couple of sessions on the essence of dharma, as I understand it. And in the words of Yudhishthira and in the words of Duryodhana, in the last chapter, where after the Gada Yuddha takes place, where Bhima slays the thighs of Duryodhana, and that's when all of these issues come up. So that will be my focus on the third Sunday in June.
Well, thank you, Prasanna. As a matter of fact, coming back to the topic for this morning, I think carrying on with what Anand said, it is not only that the student or disciple tries to seek out the help from the Guru, but Guru also is selective as to who accepts them as a disciple. So that I think there's a special relationship, like when Narendra came to see Ramakrishna, he was waiting for him because he knew that there was a need for having a good disciple who can really blossom to the fullest extent and bring out the Brahman in him. That's the only point I want to make as to what we're discussing about the relationship between teacher and the disciple. Naina, you had a question.
Yeah, a very simple one. You all spoke so well and eloquently and understandably. My confusion is, who is Sant Gyaneshwar's Guru? You said it was Nivritti Maharaj or whatever. Was that his brother? Is it his
elder brother? Yes.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, if you remember, if you read the notes on the first session,
okay.
You see what happened was they were all separated
Right.
because the tiger was chasing them, and Nevrutinath was missing for some days for about a week or so from the family. They were afraid of worse that he was probably taken out by the tiger. But what he had done was he saw when he was lost, there was a small cave, guha, where the wild animals were coming in and out, and with interacting with people who are human beings. So he goes there and goes inside, and he sits there, sees there a one person in deep meditation, and he's just quietly sits down, mesmerized by his looks on his face. And then that's where, when he opens his eyes, he accepts Nivritti as his disciple. And then he knew that he will be able to pass on the knowledge to Gyaneshwar as projected by Gorakshanath. So he blesses nivritti and starts teaching him the truth about Brahman.
Mhm.
And then, because he was well prepared by his father Vittal Pant already, he was able to grasp the entire knowledge in 1 week's time. So he returned back to his family and then started initiating Gyaneshwar underneath the tree, which itself was planted by a famous saint himself. So if you look at those notes, you'll find out how
Okay.
that connection took place. So he was a transient person, but nonetheless, the once you have that relationship, it does make a difference. As Dr. Ambachan was speaking earlier, you need a living individual to pass on the understanding of Brahman. You can read on YouTube, you can watch it on Zoom discussions,
Right.
you can read the notes, but you need a living human being to pass it on. Okay? Does that,
Right.
okay?
Yeah, it helps. And then actually that parampara you're talking about goes back all the way to Vyasa. Then
Yeah.
so that lineage.
No,
or
as a matter of fact, no, let me clarify that.
Mhm.
There's so many different paramparas.
Mhm. Sure.
So it's not necessarily Vyasa itself. Every guru has a parampara from whom he comes. When we're talking about it, we talk Sadashiva Samanamba, starting with Lord Shiva. So
Mhm.
Nath Sampradaya is different. As a matter of fact, next time when I show you, I'll show you a huge book that I have with me on Sampradaya itself.
Oh.
There are thousands of Sampradayas. Nothing is wrong,
Mhm.
but you need to follow a certain lineage, a style of teaching that comes from teacher to teacher. So when Dr. Rambachan speaks and teaches his own style that he has picked up from Swami Dayananda.
Mhm.
Understand what I mean?
Sure.
So
I
it's not the
understand.
thing right or wrong, a
Mhm.
different style. Every teacher teaches the
Mhm.
same subject matter in a different style.
Right.
If you read all the Upanishads, the subject matter is Brahman, but the teacher is different.
Mhm.
So the discussion and interaction with the students is different. So words appear different, but if you would understand the subject matter you realize is the same. Okay, that's different. Sampradaya.
Yeah.
Naina,
Mhm.
Naina,
Yes.
in terms of Guru of Sant Gyaneshwar,
Mhm.
in many of his abhangs, he always concludes by saying, Nivrutti Prasade, Gnanadeva Bhole, Nivrutti Prasade. Always Nivrutti
Mhm.
Prasad.
Mhm.
He pays homage to his Guru.
Right. Mhm.
Baparakuma Devi Varu Vitthalu Re Anumanena Anumanena Neti Neti Manate Govindure Shuddhi Neti Neti Manate Govindure. That's what Jnanadeva says.
Mhm. Right.
Of course,
Yep.
I butchered the Marathi language, but
Yeah. No, Kannada, Marathi, same.
but my heart is happy.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Your
No, I
ears are in pain,
Mhm.
but my heart
Yeah.
is happy.
Right. And I've always known that the siblings are Nurati, Shopana, Muktabai, all of them, they all had something to offer. They were all gurus.
As a matter of fact, the Nyandeva teacher was the teacher to Muktabai and Sopan, both of them.
Mhm.
Then
Okay.
Muktabai became the teacher to Changdev. So the relationship goes
Right.
on.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments?
Very good. Thank you.